Hello and welcome to Teach Online TV. My name is Tyler Basu and I am here with Jon Schumacher, who is an online marketing consultant and coach and who specializes in webinars. And so he helps a lot of entrepreneurs, online course creators, software companies, etc. Put together their webinars to enroll more customers and clients for their business. So Jon, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show today. I'm excited to dive into this topic with you.
Absolutely, Tyler. I appreciate you having me, and I'll try not to hold back here, so this will be fun.
Sounds good. So, Jon, I know I gave away just a little bit about you there, but can you tell us how you got into this? How did you end up becoming the, this webinar expert that you've become?
Yeah, so it started back in 2013, actually. I was doing one live webinar a week for an entire year, and a lot of them were more interview-based or like mini roundtable discussion-based webinars in the healthcare space, actually. That was my old industry. I was a licensed physical therapist, and so I was doing a lot of webinars with like health tech startups and like entrepreneurs in that space. And that was kind of, early days Google Hangouts and things like that, where a lot of people weren't using it. And that's really what got me into initially doing live video and doing webinar type formats. And in 2014, I just decided in my heart that it really wasn't my passion to be in the healthcare space. I was kind of fizzling out on it, and my bigger desires were to help people share their message, and it was in marketing, really. It was what I was reading and learning about and all those things. So I decided to start teaching people Google Hangouts. I actually had a brand called Google Hangouts That Convert back in 2014, where I was selling courses on how to use Google Hangouts for marketing. And that did really well. I had a partner with it. It did pretty well. We were doing webinars and selling the program via webinar mostly, and those type of things, Facebook ads, a few of those type of mechanisms. But again, just decided that I wanted to branch out. So in 2015 and earlier this year even, I decided to pivot into more of the broader webinar space, since it had good success selling the courses and helping others sell their services using live video and webinars. And I'm just continuing to grow and enjoy the journey now, and continuing to try to build my audience and help more people share their message with live video and webinars.
No, that's I can see the how the journey has evolved and how this has become your main focus now. Now, as you know, Thinkific's audience is comprised of online course creators, and so many of them have an area of expertise that they felt comfortable enough to teach. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they have an expertise in marketing. So for a lot of these folks, they've created a course and now they got to figure out how to promote their course. And because their courses are online, that means their customers can be from pretty much anywhere in the world, anyone who has access to an internet connection. And we're always telling people that webinars, you got to look at webinars. These are one of the best ways to sell something online. In your opinion, why do you think webinars are so effective, and why do you recommend that people consider using webinars as part of their sales and their marketing strategy?
Yeah, because people buy from people they know, like, and trust. And that's the biggest thing, right? And so a webinar gives you an opportunity for them to experience you with more of the human senses, right? So it's voice, it's visual, it's hopefully informative for them. I know some of them can be pitch fests a little bit too much, or there's a certain strategy or a certain methodology and a philosophy behind webinars as well too. But it's really an opportunity for people to shut everything out, to hear you, to be taught by you, to get to know you and experience you as a real person farther beyond than anything else, as far as like blogging or even podcasting where they can hear you. People get to come with you and spend time with you, usually live. Something you can do recorded webinars as well too. But one of the powerful things of the live webinar is the interaction. It's all those things that people get to know, like, and trust you over a pretty short period of time. And especially if you do a good job, you're a good presenter, you engage with them, they can tell that you actually care about their well-being. It brings it to a whole nother level of trust. And that's why webinars work so well. It's an event which has some scarcity around it, as far as like they have to attend if they wanted to do be a part of it. There might be a special offer if it is an offer style webinar. So it's the scarcity of the event coupled with all of the stimulus that people get to experience you. It's really the next best thing to like standing next to somebody and talking to them or being on stage. But you can do it from the comfort of your own home in your boxer shorts if you choose.
Yeah, that's awesome. Just keep them hidden under the desk.
Yeah,
Right? No.
right. Half on up. If you could only tell, huh?
Suit and tie from the top on the top half. Yeah, that's
party
fun.
on the top or party on the bottom, whatever they say. Huh? So.
No, I know. I can definitely see the benefits, and I love the point you brought up of people only buy from you if they know you and they like you and they trust you, and it's hard to create that in a short amount of time online. But a webinar is the next best thing to being face to face and in person with somebody. I think, and you agree. Now, in terms of actually setting up a webinar, what kind of technology and tools are we talking about? For somebody who's never done this before, what are your go-to software tools and equipment for actually running a webinar?
Yeah, so as far as equipment, and I'll start with the big picture and then drill down a little bit. There's two main categories of webinar software. One is marketing and one is conferencing. And so something like Zoom, for instance, is really great for conferencing. So I use Zoom for like one-on-one virtual client sessions, group client sessions, information-only webinars and things like that. And it's stable, it's clean, it's easy for non-techies. So if your goal is to provide information and virtual coaching via webinar, I like Zoom for that. And I think it's, as of right now, my clear winner. Where it falls short is on the marketing side, which is the other bucket, right? So Zoom lacks a lot of marketing features that will help you build your list, that'll help you sell your products and services. It lacks a lot of integrations, Facebook pixel, placements, all of those type of things that really a lot of the other platforms that I can talk about in a moment have. And so there's a distinction there, and it really starts with your goal of what to use the webinar for. Because a webinar, I like to say, is like a telephone. You can use it however you want. There's certain programs that are built for certain things. On the marketing side, I like GoToWebinar, that's been around a long time, or Webinar Jam for live webinars. That's been generally the ones that I've looked at and recommended. Easy Webinar also in its recent update has a lot nicer live room than it used to. So I like what Casey and those guys are doing there. But those are my three main ones for most budgets, unless you're going to pick like an enterprise level software that's going to cost a lot of money. But for most small businesses, those are the ones that I recommend for live webinar software. And a lot of those have, your email reminders within the system already, your presentation room, even some of your follow-up emails if you're choosing to use their own platform. So they really can have a lot of the main pieces that you need in one place.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And in terms of actually running the presentation, are you in most cases doing like a slideshow presentation, screen sharing, live video, and what's your setup like in terms of microphone and recording software or anything like that?
Yeah, so it depends on what I'm using. I'm using Webinar Jam Studio right now, which runs on YouTube Live, and so it streams through that. My microphone is just a simple, like an Audio Technica ATR 2100. My voice sounds better now. I should probably have it closer. I have a Logitech C920 camera and just a couple of lights, lighting, lights pointing at me. There's my Audio Technica laptop. There's us. And that's it, really. I mean, it's really a corner of my living room here in California. I have a condo here in California, close to the beach, where I can actually just literally broadcast from this spot to people all over the world, which is really the power of webinars, right? I mean, I have my own inexpensive. I mean, my equipment is under $500 besides my laptop, and I can reach people all over the world. Yeah. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Technology has come a long way. It's really served us entrepreneurs and marketers for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Now,
in terms of actually, deciding what to present on a webinar. So let's say you've got an online course. Maybe you've got several hours of content in your course. How do you decide, what to pick out, what to share on a webinar? Just to make sure that it is something that's attractive and compelling and that your target audience would want to come and watch. But do you have any suggestions on how to number one, choose what content to share in a webinar presentation, and then how to structure that presentation?
Yeah, this could be a long conversation, definitely. It starts with the end in mind, and I think Stephen Covey was the one who said that, begin with the end in mind. And so really your webinar is a tactic in a bigger strategy, right? And so if you have, let's say, a coaching program you're looking to offer, or a course, a Thinkific course or something that you're looking to sell on webinar, you should start with the course and think to yourself, okay, what pains or problems does this specific course solve? Mm-hmm. And then create your webinar content based on some of the key pains that product solves, and also some of the objections that people would have to buying your course or doing what you're teaching. And so I like to frame my content off of the product itself, right? And so, when you have a course, you should have a lead magnet for that course. You should have a webinar for that course. I mean, it needs to line up. Incongruency is one of the great sins in marketing, right? And so if you host a webinar on, underwater basket weaving and then try to sell them a product on Twitter marketing or something, they're gonna be like, what? I don't know how that works. So it really starts with your product and keeping big picture. How do you want to lead people to that product, and how do you want to remove the objections, so to speak, by teaching away objections, so to speak, that would potentially stop people from buying your course. Right. And so it's a little bit, if that makes sense, it's a little bit more strategic than just, most people start with a topic and then they build the content and then they try to figure out how to stuff an offer on the end of it, if it is indeed an offer webinar, which I think is a big mistake.
Okay, no, that's a great point. Do you have maybe a specific example, maybe from one of your courses or a client that you worked with, somebody who took that bigger topic inside of the course and picked out some of the pain points and made a presentation on that?
Yeah, so for myself, I teach webinars. So one of the biggest objections or things that I need to overcome is the technology is too hard, right? Like that's like a newbie sort of like, I would do this, but it's just like the technology is too complicated. I just can't figure it out. And so I need to know that. I need to know that. Another one is time. I don't have time. So I need to show people in my content a simple process that they can use. Like, look, it's just a registration page. It's a webinar room. It's some follow-up. And it's those three things that are going to get you 80% of the result. By the way, you can do all of that within a single piece of software. For under a few $100, and so if I need to understand what their pains are, but also what the objections are, and look to dissolve those during my content, so that when it comes time for my offer, it makes it more likely for them to want to engage with it.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And for live webinars, how long do you think a live webinar should be? And then of that length, how much of it is presentation or content? How much of it is sales pitch? Do you have a certain format that you like to stick to?
Yeah, there's a variety of different things you could do. You could sell your webinar and it could be longer, obviously. Some people do that, or they position it that way where they'll sell the recording and just make it longer. So it depends a little bit on how you position it. Also on is the webinar on the front end of your customer's journey or towards the back more? Mm-hmm. That's a different psychology. For front-end webinars, so for people that are maybe newer to you, I like to keep it around an hour to 75 minutes. Most people block off an hour in their calendar for things. Okay. And most people, let's just face it, they're tired of the drawn-out content, right? People are pretty time-sensitive these days, a lot more than ever. So I recommend getting to the point pretty quickly, pretty short introduction. This is just my philosophy, maybe 10 minutes of that, get right into the content. And then, again, do a good job, maybe 40 minutes or so, 30 minutes of content of painting the big picture benefits of what you're teaching, removing objections, and getting them to have a couple of emotional ahas during the content. If we can't get them to have a couple of emotional aha moments, they're not going to be excited. And then they're going to, when it comes time to take the next step with you, they're certainly going to be less likely to do so. So, and I like to have maybe 60 minutes to 75 minutes at the most. And then I'll stay on an extra hour for Q&A if people want to do that. As long as people are asking me questions, yeah, I'll go another hour, because a lot of the times the after party is where people let down their guard, you let down your guard, and you get to really talk to people and answer questions and those type of things.
Okay, cool. So in most cases, you're allocating an hour for the presentation itself, which has some room for the pitch or the offer at the end, and then you hang around for Q&A. And for as long as the questions keep coming in, you'll hang around to answer those questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. And have you found that with live webinars, because you get those questions, like it helps you to understand like more questions and more objections that maybe you missed, and then you go back and you refine your presentation, make it better the next time, and like rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat?
That's one of the reasons why I recommend that people start with live, right? Is because of that, because you get to interact with people. And again, I mean, a webinar campaign or a webinar funnel is an iterative process, right? It's not like, oh, I tried that and it didn't work, so webinars don't work. It's like, okay, like we tried this. Let's look at the information. Let's look at our data. Let's look at how it went. Let's look at what people's objections were. Having a survey on the thank you page of your webinar is a great way to collect data. I do that with almost all my webinars. It's just people can tell me what they're struggling with, right? And that helps me to frame the webinar, but it also helps me to gather ongoing data about them and continuing to improve. And then after you've done a couple of those and you feel like you have your presentation dialed in, then you can look to like automate it if you choose, if you want to go down that route.
Yeah, no, that's a great tip. I appreciate that. So when you're presenting something, you're making an offer towards the end of your webinar. Let's say you're pitching a course, for example. What can you do to encourage somebody to make that decision to enroll in your course right away, as opposed to procrastinating and saying, oh, I can get around to this later? Like, is there any way that you're incentivizing people to make a decision to buy on the spot, or like right at, or as soon as possible after the webinar ends?
Yeah, I mean, you can offer, part of it is how you position it too. Positioning it at the end of the content, I like to do what's called stretching the gap. So what I'll do is I'll let them know that they've gotten a lot of great information, but they're still missing a few pieces, and so you want to widen the gap a little bit and position your offer as really the fill in the blank kind of missing piece, so to speak, for what you're sharing and teaching. And so I don't hold back, but there's only so much time you can have with them, during the webinar. So there's going to be some that want to go deeper. So part of it is positioning. You can do live bonuses. I've done that at times where I'll give like either a bonus that's relevant, or sometimes an extra coaching session or something like that that's relevant on the webinar or within the first 24 hours. So it's good to have a little bit of urgency if you're looking to focus on sales, right? And so having an offer that's really congruent, that people would be excited to get, maybe a limited time offer or a limited space offer, can help move people on the webinar who are interested, in taking that action right now. So that does help, having a little bit of urgency and scarcity, authentic scarcity. I'm not big on hitting people over the head with, people are pretty sick of that, I think. So, just be upfront with people. Don't be like, hey, you're stupid if you don't buy now, or, people can get really outrageous with, with some of this stuff. So, you know what, honestly, I'm not as worried about on webinar sales as I am by the end of the deadline of the webinar, because the webinar is kind of the opening ceremony, so to speak, but there's all this back end activity with a deadline on the end where most of the sales happen. Like this is like, yes, the excited kind of ready to go buyers will buy on the webinar, but there's going to be a good percentage of them that are like, I need to think about this, especially if you're selling something like $1,000 or $2,000. That's not just for a lot of people a drop in the bucket, if it's a $200 course, sure, you could sell the heck out of that all day on the webinar, right? But like for me, I'm selling $1,000, $2,000 course. A lot of people, that's a big investment, and they want to make sure in me. And so I have no problem with having several pieces on the back end of that where they can reach out to me, they can text me, they can call me, they can email me, they can do all kinds of stuff to talk to an actual human, on the back of that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So in that scenario where someone's course is, $500, $1,000, $2,000, or maybe it's not a course, maybe it's like, coaching, consulting, one of those high ticket type of offers. What are some tips that you have after the webinar ends? Are we talking like email follow-ups? Are we trying to get on a call? Like, what are some of the things the steps that you like to take after the webinar is over? And how long is that time period typically from the time the webinar ends? How much time are you allotting to following up with these people?
Yeah, it's a little bit, it depends. I usually have a 4 to 5 day follow-up sequence. It's usually between 5 and 12 emails, usually 10, around 10 emails or so. So it's usually I'll usually send out a recap email, a few case studies, frequently asked question emails. And then the last 24 hours, I usually send out 4 or 5 emails. Like most of it is that it's basically, hey, this is the chance. If you have questions, message me, or kind of the urgency of the end of the deadline, right? So we need to have some urgency and make it authentic, right? If you say you're going to pull something down or change a price or something or take something away, you got to do that, But that really drives sales. I mean, I've had campaigns where I thought I didn't do that well on the webinar, but ended up having, 20 sales on the last 24 hours, or something like that. So it's like, the back end of that webinar matters a lot. So it's email is the primary. You can do Facebook retargeting, offer ads. Those work really well too. I wouldn't do this if you were just starting out and you have low volume webinars. I would just focus on email. But if you are getting higher volume webinars and you're listening to this, having retargeting people who visited your webinar live room or your sales page, and then running ads on the back end of your webinar to your offer will increase your sales. Another one is what I call data mining, where I'll download the chat role and I'll have a template that I'll follow up with people one-on-one who were active in the chat, or anybody who filled in my survey. I can actually follow up with them individually too. So a little bit of manual follow-up for kind of people that showed that they were really more of a potential customer. So there's some manual follow-up, some email, some Facebook advertising if you want to do that.
Okay. No, cool. I appreciate you sharing that. And so those are some of the things that you're doing after the webinar has already taken place. What about before, though? Do you have some preferred methods of promoting an upcoming webinar? Let's say you've picked your topic, you have an offer ready, you've put a date in the calendar, you've set up the registration page. How are you spreading the word? How are you getting people to sign up for the webinar in the first place?
Yeah, and then this is probably the second most common question that I come across besides the technology is how do I get people to show up, right? And so that is the challenge. There's basically 3 ways. I call them the 3 Ps of webinar traffic, and they're personal traffic, partner traffic, and paid traffic. And so your personal traffic is like your email, of course, your social media groups, your website traffic. Your website traffic, if you are getting some, can be a source of signups if you place like a banner or a hello bar or something there on your website. But email is still the biggest by a lot. Email marketing is not dead at all. It's still the primary source, especially if you're giving value, engaging that list, and it's not just sitting there, or you're not over promoting it. It can be a great source and is the number one source for driving personal webinar signups, right? And a distant second for me is social media, like social media groups, those type of things. That I run a Facebook group that has about 1,000 people in it, and those type of things. So that's your personal traffic, and that's where I would recommend most people start with a brand new webinar. If you have a brand new webinar, brand new offer, you're kind of on the newer end. I highly recommend not going out to Facebook and trying to spend a ton of money right away when you're just starting out, unless you're in an industry where you can get super cheap leads like clicks. There's certain industries you can still get $1.50 webinar registrations. They're getting less and less. It's certainly not my industry anymore, at least not to cold traffic.
Right.
So that's what I would start with is your personal. Your partner is like JV, like joint ventures, partnerships. I know you guys do some of that at Thinkific, where you're partnering with another person that's in or around your industry that would have an audience of people that may be a good fit for what you're teaching and sharing and offering. That's really been my key to growing quicker with summits and webinars and things is through my good friends that fortunately I have, and then finally it's paid traffic is the third one. So like Facebook, YouTube, Google Display Network, those type of things where you're leveraging a social media site or a search engine or something like that to drive traffic to your webinars.
Right. Okay. No, those are some great tips. Now we've talked about live webinars, but I do want to bring up the pre-recorded, or sometimes called the Evergreen webinars. In what scenario or circumstances would you recommend running, sending people to a pre-recorded or an automated webinar instead of doing a live one?
Yeah, I mean, they're a good tool to have, right? They're a good tool to have because we live in an on-demand society. The world is getting very global, right? And so me hosting a live webinar at a certain time here in California, probably it may not work for Australia or another country, right? And so giving people a way to consume you ongoingly, I think is smart to do after you've done a couple live webinars. You feel like you've polished your presentation a little bit. Let's get an evergreen one up. And you can use that as an asset from your website, from maybe the middle to back end of your like indoctrination or your customer journey, so to speak, your funnel, quote unquote. That could be a good place to put those kind of things. Now, a little philosophical thing here. I don't recommend lying about it or making it seem overly live or I actually go out of the way to tell people that it is. I call it an on-demand workshop. And I even tell people that, there's no like hiding it, or there's no don't ask, don't tell with me. I think that's BS. I think there's a lot of, I don't think that's the way you want people to experience you, right? Is trying to be deceived and things like that. So, I tend to turn off all of the live features that some of these platforms have and just be upfront with it. And it still converts. It still does well. It's not going to convert as well as the live webinar, but it's still there and it's still an option for people to consume you. And it scales better too, right? It's more scalable. The show up rates are much higher for an automated webinar than a live webinar. So there's some pros and cons to that.
Okay, cool. But you would recommend like testing your presentation live a few times before taking that recording and doing it automated? Because I guess the thing with the automated webinars is you don't get that real-time feedback. So you wouldn't really know if there were any gaps in your content or questions you didn't answer in your content itself unless you tested it live a few times first.
Yeah, you can get feedback. Like you say, you can have a survey on the thank you page or in the email follow-up of an Evergreen webinar as well. So you can get some feedback. But yeah, generally you're not going to get as much feedback. And if unless you have a big ad budget or something, you want to send people through it and test it, then maybe you could, right? There are some people that skip the live phase, but generally speaking, for most people, it's good to start with a live presentation to polish the presentation, to get feedback and interaction, and they do convert better, right? Like when I can interact with people, when I can ask them a question, what niche are you in? Mary's in this niche and Joe's in this niche, and actually instead of just being like a one-way street, like bring that into like kind of an experience or a transformation. Instead of it just being like information, they're actually coming up with ideas on the webinar and sharing on the webinar. That adds a lot of power to it. And your engagement rates will be a lot better if you are getting people to interact with you.
Okay, no, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I've just got one last question for you about webinars, and then we'll work towards wrapping up. But are there any big mistakes that people should avoid? Do you have any like horror stories or things that big no-nos for anyone getting into hosting webinars?
Oh, many, man. I think I've made them all. Yeah, and they're not as hard as people think, but there's a couple of tips. And the first one is for newbies that are kind of looking and staring at that technology challenge or barrier that they're worried about. It's a simple one, but it's true. It's practice, right? They say, what is it? 80% of success is showing up. Something like that, but it's really, it should be 80% are showing up prepared, right? And so most people, I can't tell you how many times I've had people buy new software and they're practicing it the day before they go live, and they're freaking out because there wasn't something configured or something like that. So when you're using your webinar software for the first time, even if you're using it again, like I still double check things. Yeah. I still make sure I always opt in through my own registration page to make sure emails go through, and it's just all those things that you should practice and test a little bit before especially if it's a sizable webinar, if you're spending money on it, or if you have a good audience going to attend, you're going to want to practice and test. So make sure to practice and test your systems. I still do that, I still do that. And so especially if you're just starting, do a practice run, get a couple buddies together, sign up for your own webinar, watch it on your phone as you practice or something. Make sure, do these things to kind of make sure that piece makes you feel more comfortable, so to speak. Another one that I am the worst at, and I still am bad at this, is overteaching. Overteaching on a webinar is because we're afraid that, there's a few psychological things. One, we don't want people to think it's waste of their time. Two, we don't want to feel like it's just like a bait and switch, or we don't want any of that kind of stuff. And then we also want we also want to look smart, right? Like my ego wants me to look smart. So I tend to think, well, they need this and this and this and this. And a lot of people will teach like a 7-step process on a webinar or something. And it's just straight how to. It's like, here's how to do this and this and this and this and this and this. And they just go through it and through it and through it. And if this is a webinar where people are newer to you and it's an offer webinar, that really kills things, right? It kills things because people often walk away more confused, and they often walk away without any reason for continuity with you, right?
Okay.
And I am so bad at this, man. Like I still have to pull. I'm actually redoing one of my webinars right now with even less, but I'm not holding back as much as I am focused, again, like I talked about in the content, on showing the big picture of success and addressing objections around that, so that people walk away feeling or decide to join me, but they have a couple of aha moments. It could be that, webinars really, the webinar funnel, so to speak, isn't that complicated. It doesn't have to be. That could be an aha for them that overcomes one of the hangups that was stopping them, or wow, these technologies really aren't as hard as I thought they were. So like my job is to dispel those things, but teach enough so that they feel good inside and feel like they got some good value out of it. And they did, because their mind shifted and their mind changed, and it maybe got them from no action to now ready to take action. And so it's the experience that, coupled with interaction, I think, is where I'm heading with things and testing with things, and I'm seeing work better than just the straight like hammer down content, that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of our audience, they have so much content. They're teaching, like they're online course creators, so they could fall into that trap as well of wanting to teach everything that they know, and trying to pour as much information as possible into a single presentation, which, as you said, can kind of backfire on you.
It does. Too much. Yeah, and people have good intentions. I love to teach. I love it, but it's to a fault sometimes, especially when I tend to talk fast and teach fast, and then people are like, whoa, like, that is way too much. And so that's always a battle to kind of pull back and think from their perspective and focus on the big pictures, the big ahas, the examples, the interaction. Those are the things that I think make up a successful webinar, live webinar.
Okay, no, great advice. Well, Jon, listen, you've shared a ton of gold on this topic. I really appreciate you taking the time to spend some time with us and to talk about this topic, because webinars is a pretty important topic. We get asked about them all the time, so I'm glad we were able to connect. Now, I like to wrap up these interviews by hopefully inspiring the people who watch them, especially those who haven't taken that step towards sharing their knowledge or creating a course yet. Somebody who's on the fence, they have an area of expertise, but they just haven't started to share that expertise with the world yet. And you're somebody who's built a business around sharing your knowledge, sharing the experience that you have, and transferring that to others. So what kind of an impact has it made on your life, you building a business by sharing what you know?
Yeah, it's a great question. And for me, it's freedom. That was my core principle. And I was in a job where I was no longer happy. Like I say, I was a licensed physical therapist in the state of California. I jumped into a busy career, burned out pretty quick. Started reading a few books that scrambled my brain up, like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and those kind of things. And all of a sudden I'm like, what am I doing? Why am I working for somebody else? And so, in my later 20s, I decided to shift, and I'd spent all of this time, money, and energy building this career that I was at the top of now, and I was like, ugh, I just don't want this. So that's when I started online, man, and it took 4 years of really kind of tinkering. Like I could have cut some of that time out if I would have, looking back, done a few things different. But God, it's been not quite, it's been about 18 months now since I've been full-time. Like I don't work for anybody. I'm not employed by any other brand or company or anything. Like I'm 100% on my own terms. I make my money as a consultant, coach, and I sell my programs online, and that's it. A little bit of affiliate sometimes with a few offers that I like. But other than that, I've been able to replace a nice income and work full time online. I'm still very much growing and learning like we all are, and building an audience and gaining more visibility and those type of things. But it's awesome. It's still stressful, but it's awesome to be able to choose and to really have no ceiling, right? And to be able to get up each morning and pursue what you're excited about. And it's still hard. I mean, you still worry like internally. I mean, I live in California. I have a wife. I own a home here. It's not cheap. I live in one of the more expensive places, in the country. But so there's some stress there. Like you got to make sure you can meet the bills. And when you're in a startup phase, sort of, there's that up and down income kind of like that can come. You'll make a bunch of money and then it'll slow down. And so there's that whole journey that we all go through as startups and quote unquote entrepreneurs, course creators, coaches, consultants, all those people. So, but freedom is really cool, man. It's fun. It's exciting. I never wanted to live the regular kind of style life, and it's a lot of fun to be a lot of fun and also scary as well, like doing this kind of thing.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I appreciate you sharing that. Well, Jon, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. And if anyone wants to learn more about you or get in touch with you, and I know you have a ton of great resources on webinars and just marketing in general. So jonschumacher.com, that's your home base online. Is that where we should send people, or do you have any other way they should get in touch with you?
Yeah, I mean, that's my primary. I have, a lot of content there, workshops, free downloads, blog posts. jonschumacher.com is my primary hub that people can come to and check out more about me. I'm also hosting the webinar masterysummit.com, which will be coming here soon, depending on when this is released here, I think within the next few weeks or so. And then webinarmasteryacademy.com is my primary program. It's a group coaching community and program where I train other people on a certain methodology of webinars and support them and help them get their tech going and keep getting their webinars going. It's a pretty neat community, so it's been fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, we'll link to all of those in the show notes below the video.
Sounds good.
Cool, Jon. Well, thank you so much, and I wish you all the best.
All right. Thanks, Tyler. Thanks for having me.